Question 1. Benchmark analysis indicates that a critical business process requires frequent data synchronization between a PeopleSoft financials instance and an external third-party payroll system. The data being exchanged includes employee personal information and salary details, which are considered sensitive. The development team is considering several methods for this integration. Which approach best adheres to secure development practices and potential regulatory considerations for handling sensitive data within the PeopleSoft ecosystem? Option A. Transmit employee personal and salary data in plain text files via FTP to the external system. Option B. Implement a secure web service using PeopleSoft's integration broker, ensuring proper authentication, authorization, and encryption of data in transit. Option C. Configure the external system to directly access the PeopleSoft database using database credentials provided by the PeopleSoft administrator. Option D. Temporarily disable PeopleSoft security checks for the specific integration user to expedite the data transfer process. Correct answer is B. Implement a secure web service using PeopleSoft's integration broker, ensuring proper authentication, authorization, and encryption of data in transit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for PeopleSoft application developers, ensuring data integrity and security when integrating with external systems. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient data exchange with the imperative to protect sensitive information from unauthorized access or modification. Developers must understand the underlying data structures, security models, and potential vulnerabilities inherent in such integrations. Careful judgment is required to select the most secure and compliant method for data transfer, considering the specific nature of the data being exchanged and the regulatory landscape governing it. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach leverages PeopleSoft's built-in security features and established integration patterns, such as using secure protocols and authenticated web services. This aligns with best professional practices by prioritizing data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Specifically, utilizing PeopleSoft's security framework for authentication and authorization ensures that only legitimate users and systems can access or modify data. Employing secure communication protocols, like HTTPS, encrypts data in transit, preventing eavesdropping. Web services, when properly secured, provide a structured and auditable mechanism for data exchange, minimizing the risk of data corruption or unauthorized manipulation. This approach directly addresses the regulatory requirement to protect sensitive data, as mandated by general data protection principles and common industry standards for secure data handling, which are implicitly expected in a professional development context. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves directly exposing database credentials to the external system. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it bypasses PeopleSoft's security layers, creating a direct vulnerability. Database credentials are highly sensitive, and their direct exposure dramatically increases the risk of unauthorized access, data breaches, and potential compliance violations related to data privacy and security. Another incorrect approach is to transmit sensitive data in plain text over unencrypted channels. This is a critical security and regulatory failure. Transmitting sensitive data without encryption makes it susceptible to interception and reading by malicious actors, leading to data breaches and non-compliance with data protection regulations. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence in safeguarding information. A third incorrect approach might be to disable security checks within PeopleSoft to simplify the integration. This is a severe ethical and regulatory lapse. Disabling security features undermines the integrity of the application and exposes it to a wide range of threats, including unauthorized access, data manipulation, and system compromise. It directly violates the principle of least privilege and the responsibility to maintain a secure system. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach integration challenges by first understanding the data sensitivity and the relevant compliance requirements. They should then consult PeopleSoft's documentation and best practices for secure integration methods. A systematic approach involves 1. Identifying the data to be exchanged and its classification, e.g., sensitive, confidential. 2. Researching applicable regulations or organizational policies governing this data. 3. Evaluating available PeopleSoft integration tools and security features. 4. Designing an integration solution that prioritizes security, authentication, authorization, and data encryption. 5. Thoroughly testing the integration for security vulnerabilities before deployment. 6. Documenting the integration process and security measures implemented. This structured decision-making process ensures that solutions are not only functional but also secure, compliant, and professionally sound. Question 2. Regulatory review indicates that a PeopleSoft application developer is tasked with creating a custom component to manage employee performance reviews. This component will access and display sensitive employee information, including salary details and disciplinary actions. The developer must ensure that the implementation adheres to data privacy regulations and internal security policies. Which approach best ensures compliance and professional integrity? Option A. Develop the custom component to grant all users with access to the component the ability to view all employee performance data, including salary and disciplinary actions, as this simplifies user experience. Option B. Rely solely on the default security configurations of the PeopleSoft system for this custom component, assuming they are sufficient for all types of sensitive employee data. Option C. Implement granular row-level and field-level security within the PeopleCode to restrict access to sensitive data based on user roles and responsibilities, and ensure all data handling complies with encryption and audit trail requirements. Option D. Store all sensitive employee data, such as salary and disciplinary actions, in plain text within the custom component's database tables to facilitate easy retrieval and reporting. The correct answer is C. Implement granular row-level and field-level security within the PeopleCode to restrict access to sensitive data based on user roles and responsibilities, and ensure all data handling complies with encryption and audit trail requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for PeopleSoft application developers, ensuring that custom code adheres to established security protocol and data privacy regulations. The challenge lies in balancing the need for functional customization with the imperative to protect sensitive information. Developers must understand not only the technical implications of their code, but also the broader regulatory landscape that governs data handling. Failure to do so can lead to significant compliance breaches, data leaks, and reputational damage. The professional challenge is to proactively identify and mitigate these risks during the development lifecycle. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the PeopleSoft security model and relevant data privacy regulations. This means implementing access controls at the PeopleCode level that are granular and aligned with job roles and responsibilities. Developers should leverage PeopleSoft's built-in security features, such as row-level security and field-level security, and ensure that any custom logic does not bypass these controls. Furthermore, any code that handles sensitive data must be designed to comply with data minimization principles, encryption standards, and audit trail requirements as mandated by applicable regulations. This proactive, security-first development methodology represents best professional practice because it directly addresses regulatory compliance and ethical data stewardship, minimizing the risk of unauthorized access or data misuse. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing custom PeopleCode that grants broad access to sensitive data without proper authorization checks is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of data security and regulatory compliance, creates a direct pathway for unauthorized data exposure, violating data privacy laws. Developing custom components that store sensitive data in unencrypted formats or in locations not designated for such information is another critical failure. This directly contravenes data protection regulations that mandate appropriate security measures for sensitive data, including encryption at rest and in transit. Such practices increase the risk of data breaches and non-compliance with audit requirements. Relying solely on the default security settings provided by PeopleSoft without any custom PeopleCode validation for sensitive data is also professionally unacceptable. While default settings offer a baseline, they are often insufficient for highly sensitive data or specific regulatory requirements. This approach fails to account for the unique risks associated with particular data elements and the evolving regulatory landscape, leaving the system vulnerable to compliance gaps. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to development. This involves understanding the sensitivity of the data being processed, identifying potential threats, and implementing controls commensurate with the risk. Before writing any people code that interacts with sensitive data, developers should consult with security and compliance teams to understand all applicable regulations and internal policies. Code reviews should explicitly include checks for security vulnerabilities and compliance with data privacy principles. Continuous learning about evolving regulatory requirements and PeopleSoft security best practices is essential for maintaining a compliant and secure application. Question 3. Cost-benefit analysis shows that fixing a newly discovered security vulnerability in a critical PeopleSoft application module will delay the upcoming go-live date by 2 weeks, potentially incurring significant penalties from the client for late delivery. As the lead PeopleSoft application developer, you have confirmed the vulnerability is exploitable and could lead to unauthorized access to sensitive customer data. What is the most ethically and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Immediately report the vulnerability and its potential impact to the project manager and the security team, recommending a delay to the go-live date to allow for proper remediation. Option B. Attempt to implement a quick, undocumented fix for the vulnerability yourself before the go-live to avoid any delays or client notification. Option C. Inform the project manager of the vulnerability, but downplay its severity to avoid alarming them and to maintain the original go-live schedule. Option D. Proceed with the go-live as scheduled and plan to address the vulnerability in a subsequent patch, hoping it is not exploited before then. The correct answer is A. Immediately report the vulnerability and its potential impact to the project manager and the security team, recommending a delay to the go-live date to allow for proper remediation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge where a developer discovers a potential security vulnerability in a PeopleSoft application. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need to address the vulnerability with the potential impact on project timelines and client expectations. The developer must exercise sound judgment, considering the ethical implications of withholding information versus the practical consequences of delaying a critical deployment. The PeopleSoft application developer role, governed by the Oracle regulatory framework for PeopleTools and PeopleCode, demands adherence to principles of integrity and responsible development. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves immediately escalating the discovered vulnerability to the appropriate stakeholders, such as the project manager and security team, while clearly documenting the issue and its potential impact. This aligns with best professional practices and ethical guidelines that prioritize data security and system integrity. In the context of Oracle's development guidelines, transparency and proactive risk management are paramount. Reporting the vulnerability, even if it causes delays, demonstrates a commitment to delivering secure and reliable software, fulfilling the developer's professional responsibility to protect the client's data and systems. This proactive disclosure prevents potential breaches and reputational damage for both the client and the development team. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to ignore the vulnerability to avoid delaying the project. This represents a significant ethical failure, as it knowingly exposes the client to security risks. Such an action violates the principle of professional responsibility and could lead to severe data breaches, financial losses, and legal repercussions for the client and the development organization. It also undermines the trust placed in the developer. Another incorrect approach is to attempt to fix the vulnerability independently without informing stakeholders and obtaining proper authorization. While well-intentioned, this bypasses established change control processes and can introduce unintended side effects or new vulnerabilities. It also fails to involve the security team, who are best equipped to assess and manage security risks according to Oracle's security standards and best practices. This approach lacks transparency and can lead to a fragmented and less secure solution. A third incorrect approach is to downplay the severity of the vulnerability to the project manager, hoping it will be overlooked. This is a direct breach of professional ethics and integrity. Misrepresenting the risks associated with a security flaw is deceptive and puts the client's sensitive information at risk. It also demonstrates a lack of accountability and a failure to uphold the developer's duty to provide accurate and complete information. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to established protocols. When a potential security vulnerability is identified, the immediate steps should be: 1. Document the issue thoroughly, including its nature, potential impact, and reproduction steps. 2. Escalate the issue promptly to the designated project manager and / or security team, providing all documented information. 3. Cooperate fully with the team responsible for assessing and remediating the vulnerability. 4. Follow the established change management and testing procedures before any fix is deployed. This structured approach ensures that security risks are managed effectively, client interests are protected, and professional integrity is maintained. Question 4. Implementation of a new business requirement necessitates capturing additional, non-critical information related to an existing delivered PeopleSoft record. The business stakeholders are eager to see this functionality implemented quickly. As a PeopleSoft application developer, what is the most appropriate approach to integrate this new data requirement while ensuring future system maintainability and upgradability? Option A. Create a child record and a related display record to capture the new information, linking it to the delivered record. Option B. Directly modify the delivered record by adding a new field to store the additional information. Option C. Create a new custom record and write PeopleCode to manually synchronize data between the delivered record and the custom record. Option D. Develop a new custom table and implement a complex data synchronization mechanism between the delivered record and the custom table using PeopleCode. The correct answer is A. Create a child record and a related display record to capture the new information, linking it to the delivered record. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in PeopleSoft development where a business requirement necessitates modifying delivered PeopleTools objects. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for functionality with the long-term implications for system maintainability, upgradability, and adherence to best practices. Developers must navigate the potential for introducing technical debt and the risk of breaking future system updates if modifications are not managed correctly. The stakeholder perspective adds complexity, as different business units may have varying priorities and understandings of the impact of these changes. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging PeopleTools' built-in mechanisms for customization, specifically by creating a child record and a related display record. This method is best professional practice because it adheres to the principle of minimizing direct modifications to delivered objects. By using child and related display records, the developer is essentially extending the functionality without altering the core delivered structure. This approach ensures that the delivered record remains intact, which is crucial for seamless application of future PeopleSoft patches and upgrades. It also promotes modularity and maintainability, making it easier for other developers to understand and manage the customizations. This aligns with the implicit guidelines of responsible system development within the PeopleSoft ecosystem, which prioritizes upgrade paths and standard customization techniques. Incorrect approaches analysis. Directly modifying the delivered record by adding a new field is professionally unacceptable. This approach directly violates the principle of not altering delivered objects. The regulatory and ethical failure here is the creation of significant technical debt. Future application of PeopleSoft patches or upgrades that also modify this delivered record would likely fail or overwrite the customization, leading to data loss or application errors. This is a failure in responsible system stewardship and can lead to increased support costs and project delays. Creating a new custom record and attempting to link it directly to the delivered record without using the appropriate PeopleTools relationship mechanisms, like child or related display records, is also professionally unsound. While it avoids direct modification of the delivered record, it bypasses the intended framework for extending functionality. The failure lies in creating an unsupported integration point. This can lead to data integrity issues, performance degradation, and complications during upgrades, as the system is not designed to manage such ad hoc linkages. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of PeopleTools' data relationship management capabilities. Creating a custom table and then writing extensive PeopleCode to synchronize data between the delivered record and the custom table is an overly complex and inefficient solution. The regulatory and ethical failure here is the introduction of unnecessary complexity and potential for data inconsistencies. Maintaining two separate data stores that need constant synchronization is error-prone and increases the development and maintenance burden significantly. It also bypasses the robust data management features provided by PeopleTools, leading to a less stable and harder-to-manage application. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such requirements by first thoroughly understanding the business need and its implications. They should then consult PeopleSoft best practices and documentation to identify the most appropriate and supported method for achieving the desired outcome. This involves prioritizing solutions that minimize modifications to delivered objects, leverage PeopleTools' inherent customization capabilities, and ensure long-term system maintainability and upgradability. A structured approach involving design, prototyping, and thorough testing is essential. When faced with a choice, always opt for the solution that aligns with the platform's architectural principles and avoids creating technical debt. Question 5. Compliance review shows that a developer has implemented a new feature in an accounts payable process that requires updating vendor payment information. The developer chose to write custom PeopleCode within a component that directly queries and updates the PS vendor table to retrieve and modify payment terms and bank details. This approach was taken to expedite development and avoid the overhead of learning and implementing component interfaces. What is the most appropriate and compliant approach for this scenario? Option A. Modify the existing PeopleCode to include direct SQL queries against the PS vendor table, as this is a common practice for performance optimization in older PeopleSoft versions. Option B. Write custom SQL statements with an application engine to directly update the PS vendor table, as this offers greater control over the data manipulation process. Option C. Create a new application engine program that directly inserts records into the PS vendor table to reflect the updated payment information. Option D. Utilize a delivered or custom-built component interface for the PS vendor table to perform all data modifications, ensuring adherence to business logic and security. Correct answer is D. Utilize a delivered or custom-built component interface for the PS vendor table to perform all data modifications, ensuring adherence to business logic and security. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in PeopleSoft development, where a developer needs to implement a new feature that interacts with existing data structures and business logic. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient data retrieval and processing with the imperative to maintain data integrity and adhere to established security protocols. Developers must understand the underlying data model and the implications of their code on system performance and security. The requirement to avoid direct table access for sensitive data introduces a layer of complexity, demanding a thorough understanding of PeopleSoft's built-in security mechanisms and best practices for data manipulation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach leverages PeopleSoft's application engine and PeopleCode to interact with data through delivered PeopleTools objects, such as component interfaces or SQL objects. This method ensures that all data access and modifications go through the established security layers and business logic defined within the application. Using component interfaces, for example, allows the developer to interact with data in a business object-oriented manner, respecting all validation rules and security checks. SQL objects, when properly defined and used with an application engine, also provide a controlled way to access data, often optimized for performance and adhering to security configurations. This approach aligns with best practices for secure and maintainable PeopleSoft development, minimizing the risk of data corruption or unauthorized access. It upholds the principle of least privilege and ensures that the application's integrity is maintained. Incorrect approaches analysis. Directly querying PeopleSoft database tables using SQL within PeopleCode or application engine, bypassing delivered PeopleTools objects, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses all security checks, validation rules, and business logic embedded within component interfaces or other application layers. It exposes the system to potential data corruption, unauthorized data modification, and security breaches, as sensitive data might be accessed or altered without proper authorization. This practice violates the principle of data integrity and security, which are fundamental to responsible software development and data management. It also makes the code brittle and difficult to maintain, as future application upgrades or patches could break the direct SQL queries if the underlying table structures change. Professional reasoning. When faced with a requirement to interact with PeopleSoft data, a professional developer should always prioritize using delivered PeopleTools objects and application logic. The decision-making process should involve 1. understanding the business requirement and identifying the relevant data. 2. Consulting the PeopleSoft application designer to identify delivered component interfaces, application engine programs, or SQL objects that can fulfill the requirement. 3. Evaluating whether a new SQL object is necessary, and if so, ensuring it is created within the controlled environment of application designer and used appropriately within an application engine program. 4. Prioritizing the use of component interfaces for transactional data manipulation to ensure all business logic and security are enforced. 5. If direct SQL access is deemed absolutely necessary, which is rare and should be heavily scrutinized, ensuring it is done within an application engine program with strict adherence to security and data integrity principles, and documenting the rationale extensively. 6. Always testing thoroughly to ensure data integrity, security, and performance are not compromised. Question 6. Strategic planning requires that PeopleSoft application developers, when implementing new features that involve sensitive employee data, proactively ensure that access controls and data visibility are strictly managed within the application itself, rather than relying solely on external network security measures. Which of the following development practices best aligns with this principle and regulatory compliance? Option A. Documenting the sensitive data fields but making no specific application-level security implementations, assuming users will adhere to implicit access guidelines. Option B. Implementing row-level security and field-level security within PeopleTools configurations and leveraging PeopleCode to enforce specific data access rules based on user roles and responsibilities. Option C. Embedding sensitive employee credentials and access keys directly within PeopleCode functions to simplify data retrieval. Option D. Disabling all application-level security checks and relying entirely on firewall rules and network segmentation to protect the sensitive employee data. The correct answer is B. Implementing row-level security and field-level security within PeopleTools configurations and leveraging PeopleCode to enforce specific data access rules based on user roles and responsibilities. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in PeopleSoft development, where the need for rapid feature delivery can sometimes conflict with the imperative of maintaining robust security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in balancing business agility with the strict adherence to data privacy regulations, which are paramount in any application development context, especially when dealing with sensitive user information. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all development practices align with established legal and ethical standards. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding and implementation of security controls directly within the PeopleCode and related configurations. This proactive stance ensures that security is not an afterthought, but an integral part of the application's design and functionality. Adhering to the principles of least privilege and data minimization, as often mandated by regulatory frameworks, is achieved by carefully controlling access and data exposure at the application level. This aligns with the spirit and letter of regulations that govern data handling and user access, ensuring that only authorized individuals can access specific data fields or perform certain actions. An incorrect approach that bypasses standard security configurations and relies solely on external network-level security is professionally unacceptable. This creates a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it assumes a level of trust in the network infrastructure that may not be consistently verifiable or sufficient to meet compliance mandates. Many regulations require granular, application-level controls to protect sensitive data, and relying solely on network security leaves the application vulnerable to internal threats or misconfigurations that could lead to unauthorized data access or modification. This approach fails to implement the principle of defense in depth, a critical security best practice. Another incorrect approach that involves hard-coding sensitive data or credentials within PeopleCode is a severe security and ethical lapse. This directly violates fundamental security principles and is often explicitly prohibited by data privacy regulations. Hard-coding makes sensitive information easily discoverable and accessible to anyone who can view the code, creating an unacceptable risk of data breaches and identity theft. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of secure coding practices and a disregard for the potential consequences of exposing sensitive information. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, clearly identify the regulatory requirements applicable to the data being handled. Second, consult with security and compliance officers to ensure a comprehensive understanding of these requirements. Third, design and implement solutions that embed security controls directly into the application logic and configuration, utilizing PeopleTools features designed for security and access management. Finally, conduct thorough testing and regular audits to verify that implemented controls are effective and remain compliant with evolving regulations. Question 7. Governance review demonstrates that a critical PeopleSoft component is experiencing significant performance degradation during peak usage. The component retrieves employee demographic data based on a manager ID. The current PeopleCode implementation iterates through a list of manager ID, and for each manager ID, it executes a separate SQL query to fetch all employees reporting to that manager. This approach is causing excessive database load. As a PeopleSoft application developer, what is the most appropriate and performant approach to refactor this PeopleCode to improve efficiency while ensuring data accuracy? Option A. Modify the PeopleCode to execute a single SQL query that fetches all employees for all manager ID in the list, using a where-in clause, and then process the results in PeopleCode. Option B. Implement a PeopleCode loop that fetches each employee's details individually using their employee ID after an initial query retrieves a list of employee ID. Option C. Rewrite the PeopleCode to fetch all employees from the employee table without any filtering, and then use PeopleCode logic to filter by manager ID. Option D. Refactor the PeopleCode to use a single SQL query that fetches all employees reporting to the current manager ID within the loop, but optimize the SQL statement itself. The correct answer is A. Modify the PeopleCode to execute a single SQL query that fetches all employees for all manager ID in the list, using a where-in clause, and then process the results in PeopleCode. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in PeopleSoft development, where a developer must balance the need for efficient data retrieval with the potential for performance degradation and data integrity issues. The challenge lies in understanding the implications of different PeopleCode approaches on system resources and the accuracy of the data presented to users. A governance review highlights the importance of adhering to established best practices and potentially regulatory compliance related to data handling and system performance, even if not explicitly stated as a direct regulatory mandate for this exam. The developer must make a judgment call that impacts not only the immediate functionality, but also the long-term maintainability and scalability of the application. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging PeopleSoft's built-in caching mechanisms and efficient data retrieval patterns. Specifically, using the fetch method with appropriate criteria and avoiding redundant data fetching within a loop is paramount. This aligns with best practices for PeopleSoft application development, which emphasize minimizing database calls and optimizing code execution. By fetching only the necessary data once and then processing it, the developer reduces the load on the database server and the application server, leading to improved performance and a better user experience. This also indirectly supports data integrity by ensuring that the data being processed is consistent and not subject to repeated, potentially conflicting fetches. While the exam focuses on PeopleTools and PeopleCode, the underlying principle of efficient resource utilization is a cornerstone of professional software development, often implicitly supported by internal IT governance policies that aim to maintain system stability and compliance with service-level agreements. Incorrect approaches analysis. Fetching data within a loop using a separate SQL statement for each iteration is a significant performance anti-pattern. This approach leads to an excessive number of database calls, each incurring overhead. From a professional and ethical standpoint, this is unacceptable because it demonstrates a lack of understanding of performance optimization and can lead to system slowdowns, impacting user productivity and potentially causing system instability. It violates the implicit professional obligation to deliver robust and efficient solutions. Another incorrect approach is fetching all records from a large table without any filtering criteria and then processing them in PeopleCode. This is inefficient because it retrieves more data than is likely needed, consuming unnecessary memory and processing power on the application server. It also increases the risk of encountering memory leaks or other issues if the dataset is exceptionally large. This approach fails to adhere to the principle of least privilege for data access and processing, which is a fundamental aspect of responsible software development. Finally, relying on global variables to store intermediate results without proper scope management or clear intent can lead to unpredictable behavior and data corruption. While not directly a performance issue, it introduces a significant risk to data integrity and makes the code difficult to debug and maintain. This approach demonstrates a lack of disciplined coding practices and can be considered professionally negligent when dealing with critical application data. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such scenarios by first understanding the business requirement and the data involved. They should then consider the most efficient way to retrieve and process that data, prioritizing methods that minimize database interaction and application server load. This involves consulting PeopleSoft best practices documentation and considering the potential impact on system performance and scalability. When faced with choices, developers should always opt for solutions that are maintainable, readable, and demonstrably efficient. If unsure, seeking guidance from senior developers or architects is a crucial step in the decision-making process. The focus should always be on delivering a solution that is not only functional, but also robust, performant, and aligned with the organization's technical standards and governance. Question 8. Investigation of a PeopleSoft application developer strategy for protecting sensitive employee salary information within a custom payroll component. The developer needs to ensure that only authorized HR managers can view this data, while other users, including payroll clerks, should not have access to individual salary figures. The developer is considering several methods to implement this restriction. Option A. Rely solely on validation rules within the PeopleCode to ensure that only valid salary figures are entered, without implementing specific access controls for viewing. Option B. Disable all security checks for the salary field within the PeopleTools security administration to improve component loading performance. Option C. Embed PeopleCode directly within the component's save-edit events to check the user's security role and prevent saving if they are not an HR manager. Option D. Implement row-level security, based on the user's role and field-level security, to mask the salary field for users who are not HR managers. The correct answer is D. Implement row-level security based on the user's role and field-level security to mask the salary field for users who are not HR managers. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for PeopleSoft application developers, ensuring data integrity and security when dealing with sensitive information within the application. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient data processing with the strict requirements for data privacy and access control, especially when dealing with personally identifiable information, PI. Developers must understand the underlying PeopleTools mechanisms for data security and adhere to best practices to prevent unauthorized access or disclosure. The correct approach emphasizes leveraging PeopleTools security features, specifically row-level security and field-level security, to restrict access to sensitive data based on user roles and responsibilities. This aligns with the principle of least privilege, a fundamental tenet of information security. By implementing these controls, developers ensure that only authorized individuals can view or modify specific data, thereby protecting PII and complying with data privacy regulations. This proactive security measure is crucial for maintaining user trust and avoiding potential data breaches. An incorrect approach that involves hard-coding security logic within PeopleCode is professionally unacceptable. This method bypasses the robust security framework provided by PeopleTools, creating vulnerabilities. It is difficult to maintain, prone to errors, and does not scale well. Furthermore, it directly violates the principle of centralized security management, making audits and updates cumbersome and increasing the risk of security gaps. Another incorrect approach, disabling security checks entirely to improve performance, is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. This action completely disregards data privacy and security requirements, exposing sensitive information to unauthorized access. It is a direct contravention of data protection laws and ethical obligations to safeguard user data. Performance optimization should never come at the expense of security and compliance. A third incorrect approach, relying solely on application-level validation without leveraging PeopleTools security is also professionally flawed. While application-level validation is important for data accuracy, it does not provide the granular access control necessary for sensitive data. It fails to address the core issue of who is authorized to see what data, leaving the system vulnerable to unauthorized viewing. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the data's sensitivity, the applicable regulatory requirements, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, or relevant U.S. federal/state laws if applicable to the PeopleSoft implementation context, and the capabilities of PeopleTools security features. Developers should always prioritize security and compliance, consulting with security administrators and legal counsel when necessary. The principle of least privilege should guide all design and implementation decisions related to data access. Question 9. When evaluating a request to implement a new financial reporting feature in a PeopleSoft application that requires significant data manipulation and facing a tight deadline, what is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible approach for a PeopleSoft application developer? Option A. Focus solely on meeting the deadline by delivering a functional but minimally tested version, relying on the assumption that the complexity of the financial data will naturally prevent major errors. Option B. Develop the feature quickly using undocumented workarounds and shortcuts, and then inform the project manager that the deadline is met but the code may require refactoring later. Option C. Implement the feature with a simplified approach that bypasses some standard data validation checks to meet the deadline, assuming end users will identify any critical issues during their review. Option D. Implement the feature using the most efficient coding techniques available. Thoroughly unit test the code, and then submit it for integration testing and user acceptance testing as per the standard development lifecycle. Correct answer is D. Implement the feature using the most efficient coding techniques available, thoroughly unit test the code, and then submit it for integration testing and user acceptance testing as per the standard development lifecycle. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma for application developers, balancing the desire to deliver a feature quickly with the responsibility to ensure data integrity and adhere to established development practices. The challenge lies in the potential for a shortcut to introduce subtle, hard-to-detect errors that could compromise sensitive financial data, a critical concern in any PeopleSoft application, especially one dealing with financial transactions. The correct approach prioritizes thorough testing and adherence to established coding standards. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring the delivered solution is robust, reliable, and maintains the integrity of the application's data. In the context of PeopleSoft development, this means following the established lifecycle for development, including proper unit testing, integration testing, and adherence to coding guidelines that prevent common pitfalls. This approach upholds the developer's professional responsibility to deliver quality software and protect the client's data. An incorrect approach that bypasses standard testing procedures, even with the intention of saving time, represents a significant ethical and professional failure. It demonstrates a disregard for quality assurance and the potential downstream impact of bugs. This can lead to data corruption, financial misstatements, and reputational damage for the organization. Furthermore, it violates implicit or explicit agreements to deliver software that meets quality standards. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on the end user to identify issues, abdicates the developer's responsibility for quality control and can lead to prolonged periods of instability and user frustration. It also fails to acknowledge the developer's expertise in anticipating potential problems. Finally, an approach that involves undocumented modifications, even if seemingly minor, undermines the maintainability and auditability of the PeopleSoft system, creating future technical debt and security risks. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the full scope of the requested change and its potential impact. They should then consult established development methodologies and best practices for PeopleSoft. If time constraints are a genuine concern, the professional decision-making process involves communicating these constraints to stakeholders, proposing alternative solutions that balance speed with quality, e.g., phased delivery, reduced scope for initial release, and documenting any agreed-upon deviations from standard procedures. The ultimate goal is to deliver a functional and reliable solution while upholding professional integrity and ethical obligations. Question 10. Benchmark analysis indicates that a new PeopleSoft component requires fields to be initialized with default values based on other fields within the same row when the row is first loaded into the component buffer. The development team is considering different PeopleCode events to implement this initialization logic. Which event is the most appropriate and efficient for this specific requirement? Option A, save pre-change. Option B, row select. Option C, row init. Option D, field change. The correct answer is C, row init. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in PeopleSoft development, where a developer must balance the need for efficient data retrieval with the potential for performance degradation and data integrity issues. The core challenge lies in understanding the implications of different PeopleCode event execution points and their impact on the overall application performance and data consistency, especially when dealing with large datasets or complex business logic. Adhering to best practices and understanding the underlying PeopleTools architecture is crucial to avoid introducing subtle bugs or performance bottlenecks that can be difficult to diagnose later. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the row init event for initializing fields that are dependent on other fields within the same row. This event fires once for each row being initialized, making it ideal for setting default values or performing calculations based on data already present in that row. This ensures that data is initialized logically and efficiently, without unnecessary processing. It aligns with PeopleTools' best practices for data initialization, promoting maintainability and performance by executing logic at the most appropriate stage of the row processing lifecycle. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to use the save pre-change event for initializing fields. This event fires just before the row is saved to the database. Using it for initialization is inefficient because the logic would execute every time a row is about to be saved, even if the fields were already correctly initialized. This can lead to redundant processing and performance issues, particularly in high-volume transactions. Ethically, it represents a failure to apply standard development practices, potentially leading to a system that is difficult to maintain and support. Another incorrect approach is to use the field change event for initializing fields that are not directly related to the field that triggered the event. Field change event fires whenever a user changes the value of a specific field. While it can be used for dependent field initialization, using it for general row initialization would lead to the initialization logic firing multiple times unnecessarily, depending on which fields are changed. This is a clear violation of performance best practices and can introduce unexpected behavior if the initialization logic has side effects. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of event-driven processing in PeopleTools. A further incorrect approach is to place initialization logic within the component buffer's row select event. The row select event fires when a row is fetched from the database into the component buffer. While it's a valid event for certain data manipulation, using it for initialization can be problematic. If the initialization logic is complex, it could slow down data retrieval, impacting user experience. Furthermore, it might reinitialize fields that have already been set by other means, potentially overriding user input or other valid data. This approach lacks the precision of row init and can lead to data integrity concerns. Professional reasoning. When faced with a requirement to initialize fields in PeopleSoft, a developer should first consider the lifecycle of a data row within a component. The row init event is specifically designed for initializing fields as rows are loaded into the component buffer. This ensures that data is set up correctly before user interaction or saving. Developers should always consult PeopleTools documentation and adhere to established best practices for event usage to ensure efficient, maintainable, and robust application development. When in doubt, analyzing the sequence of event firings and their intended purpose is key to making the correct technical decision. Question 11. Market research demonstrates that a new feature for the PeopleSoft application is highly anticipated by end users, promising significant efficiency gains. The proposed change involves modifying existing PeopleCode to integrate with a new external data source. While the developer believes the technical implementation is straightforward and the risk of data corruption is minimal, there is no formal risk assessment documented for this specific change. What is the most appropriate course of action for the PeopleSoft application developer? Option A. Focus solely on the technical implementation of the PeopleCode modification, ensuring it functions correctly, and defer any risk considerations until after the feature is deployed. Option B. Initiate a formal risk assessment process involving relevant stakeholders to evaluate the potential impacts of the PeopleCode modification on data integrity, security, and overall system stability before proceeding with development. Option C. Proceed with the development and implementation of the new feature, documenting the changes in the code comments, as the perceived risk is low and user demand is high. Option D. Implement the change immediately to meet user demand, and conduct a post-implementation review to identify any issues, assuming that any problems can be resolved quickly. The correct answer is C. Proceed with the development and implementation of the new feature, documenting the changes in the code comments, as the perceived risk is low and user demand is high. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the need for rapid application development and the imperative to maintain data integrity and security, especially when dealing with sensitive financial information. The developer must balance the pressure to deliver new features with the responsibility to adhere to established development and risk management protocols. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the pursuit of innovation does not compromise the stability or compliance of the PeopleSoft application. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured and documented risk assessment process. This aligns with general IT governance principles and within the context of a regulated financial environment, implied by the nature of PeopleSoft applications often used in such sectors, will be supported by internal audit requirements and potentially external compliance mandates. By involving relevant stakeholders and documenting the assessment, the developer ensures transparency, accountability, and a clear understanding of potential impacts before proceeding with changes. This proactive approach minimizes the likelihood of unforeseen issues and demonstrates due diligence. An incorrect approach that bypasses formal risk assessment and proceeds with development based solely on perceived low risk is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a breach of professional responsibility by not adhering to established change management and risk mitigation procedures. It introduces an unacceptable level of uncertainty and potential for negative consequences, such as data corruption, security vulnerabilities, or non-compliance with financial regulations, without proper evaluation. Another incorrect approach, which involves implementing the change without any form of risk consideration or documentation, is equally problematic. This demonstrates a disregard for established IT governance and best practices. It creates a shadow process, making it impossible to track the rationale behind the change, assess its impact retrospectively, or ensure that it aligns with the organization's overall risk appetite and compliance posture. This lack of oversight can lead to significant operational and regulatory risks. A further incorrect approach, which focuses solely on the technical feasibility of the change without considering its broader implications, is also professionally deficient. While technical skill is essential, a developer's role extends to understanding the business context and potential risks associated with their work. Ignoring the risk assessment aspect, even if the technical implementation is sound, means that potential negative impacts on data integrity, security, or business operations are not adequately addressed, leading to a failure in holistic problem-solving. Professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's IT governance framework, including its change management and risk assessment policies. When faced with a development request, the developer should first ascertain if a formal risk assessment is required based on the nature and potential impact of the proposed change. If so, they must initiate or participate in this process, engaging with business analysts, security teams, and other relevant stakeholders. The outcome of the risk assessment should then guide the decision to proceed, modify, or halt the development. Documentation at each stage is crucial for auditability and continuous improvement. Question 12. Process analysis reveals that a development team requires access to customer data for testing a new PeopleSoft HR module. The data is highly sensitive, containing personally identifiable information, PI, such as social security numbers and salary details. The lead developer, under pressure to meet a tight deadline, suggests using a direct copy of the production data in the development environment to ensure realistic testing scenarios. As a PeopleSoft application developer, what is the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to handle this situation, considering U.S. data privacy regulations and best practices for application development? Option A. Anonymize or mask the sensitive data fields in the production data before it is copied to the development environment, ensuring that no actual PII is exposed. Option B. Inform the lead developer that using production data is risky, but ultimately defer the decision to them, as they are the lead and responsible for the project timeline. Option C. Refuse to provide any data for development purposes, citing security concerns, and suggest the team proceed with testing using mock data only. Option D. Proceed with using a direct copy of the production data in the development environment, as realistic data is crucial for thorough testing, and the development environment is considered internal. The correct answer is A. Anonymize or mask the sensitive data fields in the production data before it is copied to the development environment, ensuring that no actual PII is exposed. Explanation. This scenario presents a common ethical dilemma for PeopleSoft application developers concerning data privacy and security, particularly when dealing with sensitive customer information. The challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient development and testing with the strict regulatory requirements for protecting personally identifiable information, PI. Developers must exercise careful judgment to avoid unauthorized access or disclosure of sensitive data, even in a development environment. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to data privacy regulations and established security protocols. By anonymizing or masking sensitive data before using it in the development environment, the developer upholds the principle of least privilege and minimizes the risk of data breaches. This aligns with best practices for data handling and demonstrates a commitment to protecting customer privacy, which is a fundamental ethical and often regulatory obligation. An incorrect approach that involves using production data directly in the development environment without proper sanitization represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action directly violates data privacy laws, such as those that might be enforced by the U.S. Department of Labor or other relevant U.S. agencies overseeing data handling in employment-related systems. By exposing sensitive PII to a less secure environment, it also breaches professional ethics by disregarding established security protocols and potentially creating a liability for the organization. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the request for data anonymization and proceed with using production data, demonstrates a lack of awareness or disregard for data security and privacy obligations. This can lead to severe consequences, including regulatory fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. A third incorrect approach, which is to refuse to provide any data for development purposes while seemingly cautious, is also professionally unsound. It hinders the development process and can lead to delays and inefficiencies. A more constructive approach would involve communicating the risks and proposing secure alternatives, such as the anonymization method. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a multi-step process. 1. Identify the potential risks and regulatory implications associated with the requested action. 2. Consult relevant organizational policies and data privacy regulations. 3. Propose secure and compliant alternatives that meet the development needs. 4. Document all decisions and actions taken. 5. Seek guidance from security or compliance officers if uncertainties arise. Question 13. The assessment process reveals that a critical PeopleSoft financials module is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, which is impacting user productivity. As a PeopleSoft application developer, you are tasked with investigating the root cause and recommending a course of action. Which of the following approaches best aligns with a risk-based methodology for addressing this issue? Option A. Immediately begin refactoring all custom code within the financials module, assuming that custom code is the most likely cause of performance issues. Option B. Analyze the frequency and severity of performance degradation incidents, identify the specific business processes affected, and assess the potential financial and operational impact of continued degradation to prioritize remediation efforts. Option C. Document the performance degradation in a bug tracking system and wait for a higher priority ticket to be assigned before investigating further. Option D. Focus on optimizing database queries that are currently returning the largest result sets, regardless of whether those queries are associated with the reported performance degradation. The correct answer is B. Analyze the frequency and severity of performance degradation incidents, identify the specific business processes affected, and assess the potential financial and operational impact of continued degradation to prioritize remediation efforts. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a critical need to evaluate the effectiveness of existing security controls within a PeopleSoft application. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a developer to not only understand the technical implementation of PeopleSoft, but also to apply risk assessment principles in a way that aligns with the specific regulatory framework governing the exam. The challenge lies in identifying potential vulnerabilities and then prioritizing remediation efforts based on their impact and likelihood, all within the context of the PeopleSoft environment. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it systematically identifies, analyzes, and prioritizes risks. This aligns with the general principles of IT risk management, which are implicitly expected to be understood by a PeopleSoft application developer. By focusing on the potential impact on business operations and the likelihood of a security event occurring, the developer can make informed decisions about where to allocate resources for mitigation. This proactive and structured approach ensures that the most significant risks are addressed first, thereby enhancing the overall security posture of the application and protecting sensitive data, which is a fundamental ethical and professional responsibility. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical implementation without considering the business impact or likelihood of a threat fails to address the core purpose of risk assessment. This is a regulatory failure because it neglects the requirement to manage risks effectively, which is often mandated by compliance standards. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes fixing minor issues over significant ones demonstrates poor professional judgment and a lack of understanding of risk prioritization. This can lead to wasted resources and leave the application vulnerable to more serious threats, representing an ethical failure in due diligence and a potential violation of professional standards. An approach that ignores potential threats altogether is a severe regulatory and ethical failure, as it demonstrates a complete disregard for security responsibilities and exposes the organization to unacceptable levels of risk. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the business context and the critical assets within the PeopleSoft application. This is followed by identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities. Next, the likelihood of these threats exploiting vulnerabilities and the potential impact on the business should be assessed. Finally, risks should be prioritized based on this assessment, and appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented. This systematic process ensures that security efforts are focused, effective, and aligned with business objectives and regulatory requirements. Question 14. The evaluation methodology shows that a developer is tasked with modifying a PeopleCode event on a specific component. To ensure the integrity of the PeopleSoft application and minimize unintended consequences, what is the most professional and efficient approach to assess the potential impact of this change across the entire system? Option A. Rely on the developer's prior experience and knowledge of the application to determine if any other areas might be affected. Option B. Conduct a full, system-wide regression test of all PeopleSoft modules after the change is implemented. Option C. Utilize the PeopleSoft application designer's built-in tools to trace all references and dependencies related to the modified PeopleCode and affected objects. Option D. Consult with end users across all departments to gather their opinions on potential impacts. The correct answer is C. Utilize the PeopleSoft application designer's built-in tools to trace all references and dependencies related to the modified PeopleCode and affected objects. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in PeopleSoft development where a change, while seemingly minor, has the potential for widespread impact across various application modules and user functionalities. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing this impact without extensive manual testing or over-engineering the solution. The requirement for absolute priority in adhering to the 1Z0-241 PeopleSoft Application Developer PeopleTools and PeopleCode regulatory framework means that any impact assessment must be grounded in the principles and best practices implicitly or explicitly defined within that framework, focusing on efficient and effective development lifecycle management. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it leverages the inherent capabilities of PeopleTools for impact analysis. By utilizing the PeopleSoft application designer's built-in tools, developers can systematically identify all objects that reference or are affected by the change. This aligns with the exam's focus on understanding and utilizing PeopleTools effectively. This method is efficient, accurate, and minimizes the risk of overlooking critical dependencies, thereby ensuring the stability and integrity of the application. It directly supports the principle of thoroughness in development and testing, which is a cornerstone of professional software engineering. An incorrect approach that relies solely on developer intuition or anecdotal evidence fails to meet the professional standard. This is because it introduces a high degree of subjectivity and is prone to human error, potentially leading to missed dependencies and subsequent production issues. Such an approach lacks the systematic rigor expected in a regulated development environment and could be seen as a failure to adhere to due diligence. Another incorrect approach, performing exhaustive, full regression testing for every minor change, is inefficient and unsustainable. While thoroughness is important, it must be balanced with practicality. This approach would lead to significant delays in development cycles and increased costs without a proportional increase in risk mitigation for minor changes. It demonstrates a misunderstanding of risk-based testing and efficient resource allocation, which are implicit expectations for a professional developer. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach to impact assessment. First, identify the specific change being made. Second, utilize the PeopleSoft application designer's tools to trace dependencies and identify all affected objects. Third, categorize the potential impact based on the scope and criticality of the affected objects. Fourth, develop a targeted testing strategy that addresses the identified impact areas, prioritizing critical functionalities. Finally, document the impact assessment and the testing performed for auditability and future reference. This systematic process ensures that changes are managed effectively, risks are mitigated appropriately, and the development lifecycle remains efficient. Question 15. The control framework reveals a requirement to transfer employee demographic data from a PeopleSoft HR system to a third-party benefits administration system. The data needs to be transformed to match the target system's format, and the transfer must be secure and auditable. Which of the following approaches best adheres to PeopleSoft's recommended integration practices and security principles for this scenario? Option A. Write a script that runs on the PeopleSoft server to extract data into a plain text file, which is then manually transferred to the third-party system. Option B. Utilize a stored procedure in the PeopleSoft database that the third-party system can call to retrieve the data, bypassing PeopleSoft application logic. Option C. Create a direct database link from the third-party system to the PeopleSoft HR database, allowing the third-party system to query and extract the data directly. Option D. Develop a custom PeopleCode program that uses application messaging to send the data. The PeopleCode will handle the transformation logic, and the message will be delivered via a secure channel. The correct answer is D. Develop a custom PeopleCode program that uses application messaging to send the data. The PeopleCode will handle the transformation logic, and the message will be delivered via a secure channel. Explanation. The control framework reveals a common challenge in PeopleSoft development, ensuring data integrity and security when integrating with external systems. Developers must balance the need for efficient data exchange with the imperative to protect sensitive information and comply with internal policies and potentially external regulations, though for this exam, we focus solely on the PeopleSoft framework's implications. The professional challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate and secure method for data transfer, considering the potential for data exposure or corruption if handled improperly. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it leverages PeopleSoft's built-in, secure integration technologies, using application messaging with PeopleCode for data transformation and validation, ensures that data is processed within the controlled PeopleSoft environment, minimizing the risk of unauthorized access or modification during transit. This method aligns with the principle of least privilege and robust data handling, which are foundational to secure application development. It also allows for detailed logging and error handling, crucial for auditing and troubleshooting. An incorrect approach that involves directly exposing database credentials to an external script for data extraction or insertion is professionally unacceptable. This violates fundamental security principles by creating a direct, unmanaged pathway to the database, bypassing PeopleSoft's security layers. It significantly increases the risk of unauthorized data access, modification, or deletion, leading to data breaches and potential compliance violations. Such a method lacks audit trails and error handling within the PeopleSoft context, making it difficult to track data changes and troubleshoot issues. Another incorrect approach, relying on flat file transfers without encryption or secure transport protocols, presents a similar risk. While seemingly simpler, it exposes sensitive data in transit, making it vulnerable to interception. This lack of security in data transmission is a critical failure, especially when dealing with any form of sensitive information. It demonstrates a disregard for data confidentiality and integrity, which are paramount in professional development. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the data's sensitivity, the integration requirements, and the available secure integration tools within PeopleTools. Developers should prioritize methods that maintain data integrity, enforce security controls, and provide auditable transaction logs. Consulting with security and architecture teams, if available, is also a critical step in ensuring the chosen integration method aligns with organizational security policies and best practices. Question 16. Strategic planning requires a developer to ensure that specific fields on a PeopleSoft page are initialized with default values as soon as the data for those rows is loaded into the component buffer and displayed to the user. The business requirement is to set these default values automatically when the page is accessed, before the user interacts with the data. Which PeopleCode event is the most appropriate and efficient for implementing this field initialization logic? Option A, row init. Option B, save pre-change. Option C, component post build. Option D, row select. The correct answer is A, row init. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in PeopleSoft development, balancing the need for efficient data retrieval with the potential for performance degradation and data integrity issues. The professional challenge lies in understanding the implications of different PeopleCode event execution points and their impact on the overall application performance and data consistency, especially when dealing with large datasets or complex business logic. Careful judgment is required to select the most appropriate event to ensure the business requirement is met without introducing unintended side effects. The correct approach involves leveraging the row init event for initializing fields on a page. This event fires once for each row fetched into the buffer when a page is displayed or navigated. It is the standard and most performant place to set default values or perform initial data population for fields that are displayed to the user. This aligns with best practices for PeopleSoft development, ensuring that initialization logic is executed at the appropriate time during the user interaction lifecycle, minimizing overhead and maximizing responsiveness. It adheres to the principle of executing logic as close to the user interface as possible without impacting data-saving operations. An incorrect approach would be to place this initialization logic in the save pre-change event. This event fires just before the system saves data to the database. Executing initialization logic here is problematic because it would run every time a save is attempted, even if the user is not intending to save or if the data is already initialized. This can lead to unnecessary processing, potential performance issues, and could even overwrite user-entered data if not carefully managed, violating data integrity principles. Furthermore, it deviates from the intended purpose of save pre-change, which is for validation and data manipulation directly related to the save operation. Another incorrect approach would be to use the row select event. This event fires when a row is selected by the user on a scroll level. While it fires for each row, it is triggered by user interaction, selection, rather than the initial loading of the row into the buffer. Using row select for initialization would mean the logic only executes when a user explicitly selects a row, not when the page initially loads, failing to meet the requirement of initializing fields upon data display. This would lead to inconsistent data presentation and a poor user experience. Finally, placing the initialization logic in the component post build event is also incorrect for this specific requirement. Component post build fires after the entire component buffer has been built and all rows have been fetched. While it fires before the page is displayed, it is a more global event. Using it for field initialization on a specific row can be less efficient than row init, as it might involve iterating through all rows to find the relevant ones. More importantly, Row init is specifically designed for row-level initialization, making it the semantically correct and most performant choice for this task. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves 1. Understanding the precise business requirement and the desired user experience. 2. Analyzing the lifecycle of data within a PeopleSoft component and page. 3. Identifying the PeopleCode events that fire at the most appropriate stage for the required action. 4. Considering the performance implications of executing logic in different events, especially with large datasets. 5. Prioritizing events that are semantically aligned with the action being performed, e.g., initialization, validation, saving. 6. Testing the chosen approach thoroughly to ensure it meets the requirement without introducing bugs or performance degradation. Question 17. The performance metrics show a consistent degradation in the processing speed of the accounts payable voucher creation process, with transaction times doubling over the past week. As the PeopleSoft application developer responsible for this module, what is the most appropriate initial course of action to diagnose and resolve this performance bottleneck? Option A. Analyze the SQL statements generated by the voucher creation PeopleCode using PeopleTools SQL trace and execution plan analysis to identify inefficient queries or missing indexes. Option B. Immediately increase the application server's memory allocation and restart the server to see if resource constraints are the cause. Option C. Disable all custom PeopleCode events within the voucher component to isolate whether a custom modification is the source of the slowdown. Option D. Review the PeopleCode for the voucher creation component and rewrite any sections that appear to be overly complex or lengthy, without specific performance profiling. The correct answer is A. Analyze the SQL statements generated by the voucher creation PeopleCode using PeopleTools SQL trace and execution plan analysis to identify inefficient queries or missing indexes. Explanation. The performance metrics show a significant increase in the response time for a critical PeopleSoft component, specifically impacting the processing of financial transactions. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly affects business operations, potentially leading to financial losses, reputational damage, and non-compliance with reporting deadlines. The developer must diagnose and resolve the performance issue efficiently and effectively, ensuring minimal disruption and adherence to established development and deployment standards. The correct approach involves a systematic, data-driven investigation using PeopleTools, diagnostic tools, and PeopleCode debugging techniques. This includes analyzing SQL execution plans, identifying inefficient PeopleCode logic, and reviewing system configurations. The developer should leverage their understanding of PeopleTools architecture and best practices for performance tuning, such as optimizing SQL queries, minimizing redundant data fetches, and employing efficient PeopleCode constructs. This approach represents best professional practice because it is methodical, minimizes risk, and ensures that the solution is robust and sustainable. It aligns with the implicit regulatory expectation of maintaining system integrity and operational efficiency, which are foundational to reliable financial reporting and business processes. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement a quick fix without thorough analysis. For example, arbitrarily increasing memory allocation or disabling logging without understanding the root cause could mask the problem temporarily but lead to more severe issues later, potentially violating internal IT governance policies and best practices for system stability. Another incorrect approach would be to modify PeopleCode in a production environment without proper testing and change control procedures. This poses a significant regulatory and ethical risk, as it could introduce new bugs, corrupt data, or cause system outages, leading to non-compliance with data integrity and audit trail requirements. Furthermore, failing to document the investigation and resolution process would be a failure in professional accountability and transparency, hindering future troubleshooting and knowledge transfer. Professionals should approach such situations by first gathering all available performance data. Then, they should formulate hypotheses about the root cause and systematically test each one using appropriate PeopleTools and PeopleCode debugging and profiling tools. Any proposed solution should be thoroughly tested in a non-production environment, adhering to the organization's change management policies. Communication with stakeholders regarding the impact and resolution timeline is also crucial. This structured decision-making process ensures that solutions are technically sound, compliant with internal policies, and minimize business risk. Question 18. The performance metrics show a noticeable degradation in the processing time of a key PeopleSoft batch job. Upon initial investigation, several sections of PeopleCode within the relevant application engine program appear to be candidates for optimization. Which of the following approaches best addresses this performance issue while adhering to professional development standards? Option A. Systematically analyze the identified PeopleCode sections, profiling their execution and exploring alternative, more efficient PeopleCode constructs or algorithms to replace the current implementation, followed by comprehensive testing. Option B. Focus solely on external factors such as database indexing or server load, deferring any in-depth analysis of the PeopleCode itself until other system-level issues are ruled out. Option C. Immediately comment out or remove the PeopleCode sections that are suspected of causing the slowdown, assuming they are non-essential, and monitor the batch job's performance. Option D. Implement a complex, undocumented workaround that leverages obscure PeopleTools features to bypass the perceived bottleneck without extensive documentation. The correct answer is A. Systematically analyze the identified PeopleCode sections, profiling their execution and exploring alternative, more efficient PeopleCode constructs or algorithms to replace the current implementation, followed by comprehensive testing. Explanation. The performance metrics show a significant increase in the response time for a critical PeopleSoft component, impacting user productivity. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a developer to not only identify the root cause of the performance degradation, but also to implement a solution that adheres to established coding standards and best practices within the PeopleSoft framework. The pressure to resolve the issue quickly must be balanced with the need for a robust and maintainable solution. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic and documented investigation of the PeopleCode. This includes analyzing the specific code segments identified as potential bottlenecks, considering alternative implementations that are more efficient, and thoroughly testing the changes in a non-production environment before deployment. This methodical approach ensures that the fix is effective, does not introduce new issues, and aligns with the principles of good software engineering, which are implicitly expected in professional development environments governed by general IT best practices and the implicit requirements of maintaining a functional and reliable application. An incorrect approach that involves immediately commenting out or removing the offending PeopleCode without understanding its purpose or impact is professionally unacceptable. This bypasses proper debugging and analysis, potentially breaking essential functionality and creating a technical debt that will be difficult to resolve later. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the integrity of the application. Another incorrect approach, such as implementing a complex, undocumented workaround that relies on obscure PeopleTools features or undocumented behaviors, is also professionally unsound. While it might temporarily alleviate the performance issue, it makes the code unreadable, unmaintainable, and prone to failure during future upgrades or patches. This violates the principle of writing clear, understandable, and maintainable code. Finally, an approach that involves blaming other system components or external factors without concrete evidence and failing to thoroughly investigate the PeopleCode itself is a failure in professional responsibility. It shifts focus away from the developer's direct area of control and expertise, hindering effective problem solving. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Acknowledging the reported issue and its impact. 2. Initiating a structured investigation starting with the most likely culprits, in this case the PeopleCode. 3. Utilizing debugging tools and performance analysis techniques to pinpoint the exact cause. 4. Researching and evaluating alternative efficient coding patterns. 5. Implementing the chosen solution with thorough unit and integration testing. 6. Documenting the problem, the solution, and any lessons learned. 7. Following established change management procedures for deployment. Question 19. The performance metrics show a noticeable degradation in the response time for the expense report submission process. As a PeopleSoft application developer, you suspect that the PeopleCode associated with the expense report approval component might be a contributing factor. Which of the following approaches would be the most professional and effective in addressing this performance issue? Option A. Immediately implement a new, more aggressive caching strategy for all expense report-related data, assuming that data retrieval is the primary bottleneck, without first profiling the existing code or validating the assumption. Option B. Disable certain non-critical PeopleCode events within the expense report approval component that are suspected of contributing to the overhead, without a clear understanding of their functional impact or performing any testing. Option C. Analyze the PeopleCode within the expense report approval component using PeopleSoft's built-in debugging tools and performance profiling features to identify specific sections of code that are consuming excessive processing time. Subsequently, refactor or optimize these identified code sections, ensuring thorough unit and integration testing in a development environment before considering deployment. Option D. Increase the server resources allocated to the PeopleSoft application server, such as CPU and memory, as a general performance enhancement measure, without investigating the specific cause of the slowdown within the expense report submission process. The correct answer is C. Analyze the PeopleCode within the expense report approval component using PeopleSoft's built-in debugging tools and performance profiling features to identify specific sections of code that are consuming excessive processing time. Subsequently, refactor or optimize these identified code sections, ensuring thorough unit and integration testing in a development environment before considering deployment. Explanation. The performance metrics show a significant increase in the average processing time for critical PeopleSoft component responsible for financial transaction posting. This implementation challenge stems from the need to optimize performance without compromising data integrity or introducing security vulnerabilities, all while adhering to the strict development guidelines and best practices expected within the PeopleSoft ecosystem. The developer must balance technical solutions with an understanding of how changes might impact downstream processes and user experience. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven investigation. Identifying the root cause through targeted debugging, code profiling, and analysis of system logs is paramount. This aligns with the principles of responsible software development, ensuring that performance enhancements are well-founded and do not introduce unintended side effects. Furthermore, adhering to established PeopleSoft development standards and thoroughly testing any proposed solution in a non-production environment before deployment is a critical safeguard against introducing defects or security risks, which are implicitly governed by the need for reliable and secure application operation within any enterprise. An incorrect approach that involves immediately implementing a broad, untested optimization technique, such as indiscriminately adding indexes to all related tables without prior analysis, is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to performance degradation in other areas, increased database overhead, and potential data corruption if not carefully managed. It bypasses the essential diagnostic steps and introduces risk without a clear understanding of the problem. Another incorrect approach, such as disabling logging or auditing features to reduce processing overhead, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Such actions directly compromise data traceability and security, potentially violating compliance requirements related to financial data handling and audit trails. This demonstrates a disregard for the integrity and security of the system, which is a fundamental professional obligation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with problem identification and data gathering. This involves understanding the reported issue, collecting relevant metrics, and then proceeding to diagnose the root cause. Once the cause is identified, potential solutions should be evaluated based on their effectiveness, impact on other system components, and adherence to development standards. A phased implementation with rigorous testing in a controlled environment is crucial before deploying to production. This systematic approach ensures that solutions are robust, reliable, and maintain the integrity and security of the PeopleSoft application. Question 20. The assessment process reveals that a critical batch process in PeopleSoft is experiencing significant performance degradation, leading to extended run times and impacting downstream operations. Initial user feedback suggests the process is slow. As a PeopleSoft application developer, what is the most effective and professional approach to diagnose and resolve this performance issue? Option A. Analyze the SQL execution plans for the queries within the batch process to identify and optimize any inefficient database operations. Option B. Rewrite the entire PeopleCode logic of the batch process to simplify it, without first profiling or analyzing the existing code. Option C. Focus on optimizing the user interface elements of any related online pages, as users perceive the overall system as slow. Option D. Immediately add new database indexes to tables involved in the batch process, assuming this will improve query performance. The correct answer is A. Analyze the SQL execution plans for the queries within the batch process to identify and optimize any inefficient database operations. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in PeopleSoft development: optimizing process performance without compromising data integrity or adhering to established development standards. Developers must balance the need for speed with the imperative to maintain accurate and reliable data, which is foundational to any financial or operational system. This scenario is professionally challenging because performance tuning can introduce subtle bugs or violate architectural principles if not approached systematically and with a deep understanding of PeopleTools and PeopleCode. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a methodical, data-driven investigation. By analyzing the execution plan and identifying specific SQL bottlenecks, the developer is directly addressing the root cause of the performance issue. This aligns with the principle of efficient resource utilization and adherence to performance best practices within the PeopleSoft framework. Furthermore, focusing on SQL optimization is a standard and effective technique for improving application performance in database-driven systems like PeopleSoft, ensuring that the system remains responsive and scalable. This approach also implicitly supports the integrity of the data by not introducing code changes that could inadvertently alter data processing logic. An incorrect approach that involves indiscriminately adding indexes without proper analysis is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to performance degradation in other areas of the application where the new indexes are not beneficial or even detrimental, and it can also increase the overhead of data modification operations, inserts, updates, deletes. It violates the principle of targeted problem solving and can introduce unintended consequences, potentially impacting data integrity if the indexing strategy is flawed. Another incorrect approach, such as rewriting complex PeopleCode logic without first understanding the existing implementation's intent and performance characteristics, is also professionally unsound. This is a high-risk strategy that can easily introduce new bugs, break existing functionality, and is unlikely to address the actual performance bottleneck if it lies within the database interaction rather than the PeopleCode itself. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to follow a structured debugging and optimization process. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on front-end user interface enhancements without investigating the underlying process performance is misguided. While UI improvements can enhance user experience, they do not address the core issue of a slow-running process. This approach fails to tackle the root cause of the problem and represents a superficial fix, potentially leading to user frustration when the underlying slowness persists. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the reported problem thoroughly. 2. Gather relevant data, logs, performance metrics, user feedback. 3. Formulate hypotheses about the root cause. 4. Test hypotheses systematically, starting with the most likely or impactful areas, e.g., database queries. 5. Implement targeted solutions based on evidence. 6. Thoroughly test the solution to ensure it resolves the issue without introducing new problems. 7. Document the changes and their impact.